Trina right here with day 12 of 365 days of realizations. So today I want to talk about something interesting that I have been playing with. That's how I tend to work things out, is just kind of being playful about it and just playing with ideas and considering possibilities, like outside of the box thinking. One of the most important things to always remember is that for the most part, for most of us, we are living inside of the delusion, the illusion, the matrix, whatever you want to call it, which does not mean that we can't think outside of it, but it means that we have to be more conscious to do that. So what does that mean? That means that we have to question pretty much everything, but we really have to question what seems to be the most normal way that everybody does things, or even the way that we do things. So one of my noticings was that when someone takes on a identification of being something specific, like they've put themselves in a category, and usually this is because they are wanting to shift it. They have a strong belief that they want something to be different than it is. So, for example, somebody that is eco-friendly or environmental, is friends with the earth, is really engaged about wanting to shift things on the planet. And so that's how they identify themselves. And what's tricky about it with the law of attraction is that in identifying themselves in that way, they are in essence amplifying the opposite, because we couldn't identify with something if the opposite didn't exist, so that we could be identified sort of against it. Very, very interesting. So I noticed this in my own life in terms of spirituality. So if in terms of self-realization, I want to think, I'm really awake, I'm really conscious, I'm really doing this thing, and I already have this belief, because I do still have some beliefs, that not as many people are awake as are asleep, and even my recognition that there's a lot of sleeping people then makes that more, but also my own identification of being awake is juxtaposed against the idea that there are people that are asleep, because one couldn't exist without the other. It's just really funny. And I'm not saying that it's something that we could shift easily. It's just a noticing. It's like everything in this funny little delusion, when we use our logical mind, when we let the physical mind take over and try to take us places, it often misses the point, because so much of what Maya is calling us to, or the delusion or the matrix is calling us to, is that side of the equation, which is filled with the forgetting, taking us further away from the truth of who we are, in an attempt to minimally and for a peak period of time solve that sort of yearning that we have that can only be met by turning our attention inward. So why is it that it's important in relevance to me? Because that's what I'm interested in. I think this might be relatable to some of you, but why is it important to me that I feel like I am awake? I mean, it's interesting. Of course it's important for me to think I'm awake. How would I have any measurement of where I'm doing on the path? And why would the path even be relevant if everybody else was already awake? I mean, if we were all coming from a self-realized place, if we all lived in awareness all the time, if we all knew that everything was love and light and it was all an illusion and we were just bouncing that illusion around, then the words I'm awake wouldn't even be relevant, because everyone would be awake. So it still does have meaning. It's just me now choosing, because I recognize this, to be more conscious and not needing to place my awakeness against someone else's sleepiness. So I'm awake because I choose to live a conscious life, because I choose to make choices that are different than the choices that are encouraged within the matrix, without needing to comment on what choices people are making. I mean, part of the hard part of that is that just look around, see where money's being spent, see what's fueling the experience on this time-space reality on this planet, and it doesn't take too much to then realize the choices that most people are making, which are often different than the choices that I would make. Still, it does not serve me, or it does not make a big difference for me to be able to say, well, hey, I'm making better, bigger, different choices, so that makes them better. I am making different choices. Each is an equally beautiful and valid expression of the one infinite and of God. And I couldn't be having the journey that I'm having if that element didn't exist. But let's try to keep that element downplayed instead of amplifying it. So one of the things that I noticed is, as I practice this and start to focus more on, in my little bubble, in my little projected reality, which is all that I can really know or be fully responsible for. I mean, if I see it way out there, then I can cursorily see it and decide not to focus on it, which keeps it way out there. Is that I notice that whenever I'm out and about in town, I tend to meet my friends from Ananda. It doesn't matter if I'm at a restaurant, the grocery store, the hardware store, I just happen to run into them often. And it seems like clearly that has to be the law of attraction because they live in their community, which is about a 35, 40-minute drive from town. So what are the chances, like today after Sunday service, that I would pick a restaurant and go to a restaurant and then find someone from Ananda at the restaurant? So, and the other day I ran into the spiritual director of Ananda at a different place where I'd taken my kids to have tea. So these things happen, and it's because we choose to make our focus different. So my invitation is, how can you focus on what you're excelling at and what you're doing good at without needing to parlay that against or put that up against something else that someone else isn't doing? Because it's so easy to not even have that awareness. Like to say, I'm a good parent, what are you basing that? A good parent compared to what? We often in duality use that compared to something. So if we didn't do that, then it gives more and more room for more and more awakened, different people that are lit up and conscious and awake to arrive into my experience. And since I am creating it, it is my illusion. That's what I want. So I invite you to consider that. And I'm excited to have this conversation. If you have any comments or want to engage in it or play in it more, just drop a comment in one of the boxes below and I will get to it. I'll talk to you later. Bye. See you tomorrow.